So again, welcome. Tonight's session is tree identification in fall or autumn, and this is part of our seasonal tree ID series presented by myself. And my name is Emily Ferguson. I'm a Charlottesville area tree steward. We're going to use the chat throughout the presentation to make it a little bit more interactive. And I hope that you will feel free to guess because there's no wrong answers. We'll just sort of nudge you in the right direction if we need to. We're going to have a slide at the very beginning that tells you where you can go to get the slides after the presentation. I should just put that up right now. So hold on one second. Okay, so I think everybody can see my screen. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner is the Charlottesville Area Tree Steward logo. And if you go to that website address and you pull the drop down all about trees, underneath that there will be an option to view recent tree basic presentations, and that's where this will be listed at some point tomorrow. And yes, it'll be all about when I get it set up. So let's see, I lost my notes. Hang on a second. There they are. Okay. All right. So the idea of this presentation is to go through all of the different trees by season according to their color. And what we're going to do is start off with some basics about why trees change color and what happens and what makes that, how that comes about. Then we're going to go into just figuring out a little bit about how to use terminology that's related to trees. Then we'll go through identifying trees, and then we'll round it out with a couple of things that you can look for this time of the year. So I'm just going to get right into it. This time of year, we have leaves that change color, and there's three factors that are involved in that: timing, pigments, and weather. And it's really funny. Every year I get ready for this presentation and I was like, weather. Should it be weather or should it be climate? So I had to go look that up. And weather refers to short-term atmospheric conditions, while climate is about weather patterns over a long period of time, usually about 30 years. So I guess we have to go with weather for this instead of looking at climate. So, and underneath weather, we're going to be looking at temperature, sunlight, and moisture levels, because those are going to be some key things that help us when we are doing, when we're talking about fall color and why that happens. So timing is a really big deal, and I like to make sure I put that in the presentation. While most of us celebrate the whole day for the summer solstice or the autumnal equinox, there's actually an exact moment for those. And for the summer solstice, that is the moment when the sun, when the northern hemisphere is directly facing the sun. It's also the longest day of the year, and it has the greatest number of daylight hours, which is really interesting because I think our plants actually count night hours, not daylight hours. And for the autumnal equinox, that's the moment when the sun is directly above the Earth's equator. And this year it was at September 22nd at 8:43 a.m., which is very precise. The sun rises in the due east and sets in the due west on the equinoxes. And on this day, the days and nights are approximately, but not exactly, equal in length for everyone across the globe. And the word equinox comes from the Latin equus, which means equal, and nox, night, or equal night. When we're looking at our leaves, we're going to be talking about pigments, and we have several different pigments that we need to discuss this evening. The first one is chlorophyll. That's what's going to make our leaves green almost all year long, or actually, I should say, for evergreens, they're green all year long. For our hardwoods, our green is only going to be from spring through middle of August, September, maybe or early November, depending on how our fall foliage is going. Carotenoids are the yellow, orange, and red. These are in the chlorophyll or work with chlorophyll to harvest light energy and shed some excess light energy. So they're trying to capture as much excess so that it's not dispersed and lost. And then if there's too much light hitting our leaf, it'll shake some of that off so that the machinery for photosynthesis can keep going. And these carotenoids include carotenes as well as xanthophylls. And we'll get into those a little bit later on. Anthocyanins are going to be your blue, purple, and red, and they are manufactured in the leaf and they give the color to fruits. So when we see something that is red, it is in an acidic condition, and if it's blue, it's in a more alkaline condition. And that's how our anthocyanins work. And it's pretty interesting. They are not in the leaves at the start of the fall season, but they are manufactured by the leaves throughout the fall season. And then the last one is tannins. They're already in the leaves. This is going to be what gives us that brown color. They're bitter substances that are secondary metabolites, and they're produced in the leaves to protect them from bacteria and fungi, reduce herbivory, and they're responsible for the brown when there's no more photosynthetic pigments left. And the anthocyanin that's manufactured in the leaf, no one really knows why anthocyanin is in plants. Some say it's a sunscreen that helps inhibit the destruction of chlorophyll. If anybody's seen a crane-flight orchid leaf, it's purple on the underside, and that purple is anthocyanin, and that is actually preventing herbivory, because if you know what a cranefly orchid is, it only has one leaf. So if it loses that one leaf, then it's not really going to be able to do a lot of photosynthesis. And that leaf is set up so that when there is sun going across the florist floor and the sun is beating down on that leaf, that anthocyanin can also help disperse some of the excess heat so that the machinery for photosynthesis can keep working and not get stuck by getting overly heated. So it's very interesting stuff. There's over 400 different anthocyanins. I got wrapped up looking those up a couple months ago, and I need to not spend too much time on them tonight. So we just looked at those pigments in the chart, and now I wanted to actually show you those pigments in a leaf. Here's the chlorophyll that's declining in the leaves. It's starting to get a little bit less green. Once that chlorophyll starts declining, we start seeing that xanthophyll. It's unmasked, and we see the yellows that are underneath. And as it gets further along, we start seeing the oranges, which is the carotenoids, or the carotenes. Sorry, I should have got that right. And then the anthocyanins are these purples and deep pinks, and that's what's being formed in the leaf. So I wanted to go back to baby bio, where we actually have to look at a plant cell, because those pigments that we just talked about, they're in different places in the cell. So our cells are different from plant cells because our cells lack a cell wall, which is this one around. We don't have chloroplasts in our cells, and we don't have a really large vacuole like this thing right here. And when we're looking at the carotenoids, so that's the xanthophyll and the carotenes, those are actually in the chloroplasts. And you can see how little the chloroplasts are. There's definitely going to be hundreds of them in a leaf because this is just a cartoon drawing. But the part that's really interesting is that this vacuole right here is where we have the anthocyanin developing. And the anthocyanin is consuming sugars that are in that vacuole and causing that red display, red, pink, purple display. And you can see how much space a vacuole takes up in a cell. Vacuoles are often used to help cells have turgor pressure, so they keep the cell full, and that means that we don't have a wilting plant on our hands. So they're pretty interesting to see. The next thing we have to look at is weather. And I already talked about how weather is the more important piece here. So we have sunlight. We want abundant sunlight, and we want temperatures that are cool temperatures and temperatures that are above freezing. So not this week, but last week when we started off in the 40s in the morning and we got to over 70 in the afternoon, those are perfect days for fall color to be getting manufactured more and more because the chlorophyll is actually being pulled out of the leaves, put back into the twigs. And by removing that from the leaf, we're getting those yellows and oranges showing up from the xanthophyll and the carotenes. And then we also have those cooling temperatures allow that anthocyanin to start being manufactured in the leaf. And moisture levels are also important because we want adequate summer rain, which we didn't have this year. We had a deluge in the end of September instead. And soil moisture can also help brighten the color. While if we have drought stress, you can have diminished color intensity. So it's really interesting this year. I think our color intensity is not quite what it has been, but we are still, I think this past weekend was maybe peak, but we're still enjoying some really beautiful fall colors right now. So I just think I've said some of this, but I'll go over it. Carotenoids, the chlorophyll decreases as other pigments are exposed in the leaf. Here are some yellows that you can see from the xanthophylls, and here are the carotenes that we're seeing. Interestingly, the keratin starts degrading at the same time as the chlorophyll, but they degrade at a much slower rate. So that allows these oranges to show up while the green is completely disappearing. So I think that's really an interesting piece that I didn't know until today. And then the anthocyanin, as I mentioned, it needs those cool temperatures, particularly at night, combined with really warm days and abundant sunlight that helps the formation of these. And these are sugar concentrations in the leaves. So the anthocyanin is produced with that sugar concentration. So the higher the amount of sugar that's in the leaf, the redder or pink or purple that it becomes. And sometimes you can see in July 30th this year, I found my first red leaf. Drought stress can cause these things to happen sooner. And that's what made me really nervous because we hadn't even hit the beginning of August and I was already seeing red leaves on the ground, which makes me nervous. So that can have abscission starting early, and I want to show you what abscission is. Abscission is the detachment of anything from a plant, so it can be leaves, flowers, or fruit. But in this instance, we're going to be talking about the petiole of a leaf to the twig. And so you can see the petiole, or this is the leaf stem is another word for it, and where it joins the stem, and you can see there's an axillary bud there. So as the days are getting cool and there's less light, we get these suberized cells forming a protective layer on both sides. And this is after some of that chlorophyll is pulled out of the leaf. And once that chlorophyll is pulled out, and this separation layer starts to become larger, that's when we're going to get some of those anthocyanins being manufactured. So abscission itself is the drop of this leaf, and that's how we have a fall. And we do have some trees and some families that are really bad at leaf drop, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So to wrap it up, if we have freezing conditions, this machinery is all going to literally explode, because when we have frost or a frozen or a freeze, our cells with a lot of water content will burst when they freeze, because that water will expand and break the cell wall. And that's how everything sort of starts falling down in the woods, all of those herbaceous things. All the pigments eventually break down and they leave brown tannins. And the tannins are bitter and they may discourage other things from foraging. And I want to make a note here as well. Evergreens have needle-like or scale-like foliage that is covered with a heavy waxing coating, which allows the fluid in their cells to be resistant to freezing. Thus, they can have foliage that withstands the severest of our winter conditions. It should be noted that you will see older needles on the inside of evergreen trees turning yellow or brown or reddish tan in the fall. This is a very natural process. It's usually subtle and goes unnoticed, but they lose their needles that are over 2 or 3 years old. And I think they lose about 10% of their foliage when that happens. I should check that number next time. So that's the color and how that happens. And now we're going to go through some leaf terminology for everybody. So here we have a tree. We're going to do the parts of a tree. We have the crown, which is this lovely wide top part of this tree. That includes branches and twigs that are holding leaves and fruit. We have a trunk down here, which is a woody stem that is a prominent structure for support. This is going to contain the phloem and xylem. Phloem moves sugar where needed in the tree. This could be up or down, and xylem only moves water from roots up through the tree. And then underground, where we can't see it, but should be just as wide or wider than this tree that we see here, we should have roots, lateral roots, taproot, root hairs, all of those things in there. And tonight we're going to look at characteristics. These are all the characteristics that are available for identifying trees: habitat, tree form, bark, twigs, buds, and leaf scars, persistent, conspicuous fallen flowers or fruit. Leaves are going to be available in spring, summer, and autumn, but we're going to lose them for winter, as well as we're going to lose our flowers, or we've already lost our flowers and our fruit. We're going to see sometimes sticking around, depends on how delicious it is, whether other animals come by to eat it. But these are all of the characteristics. And when I do tree ID by myself, or when I'm out there in the woods doing tree ID, I usually start with the big picture and then I come down, narrowing to smaller, more important details. So for me, habitat is a big deal. Then I look at the shape of the tree, the bark. Then I look for if we have any persistent stuff. I can do twigs, bark, and scars if I want, but sometimes having leaves, I get to cheat a little bit. And remember, we're out there trying to problem solve when we're doing tree ID. So we want to use as many different pieces all at once to help us identify a tree. So we want to use several different characteristics so that we really can be confident in that tree ID when we make it. Oh, and my slide changed on its own. That's very interesting. Okay, so here's the broadleaf anatomy. We have the petiole or the leaf stem, which I mentioned earlier. This is the base of the leaf over here. These are lobes where these points are all the way around. And in between the lobes is something called the sinus. It's listed over here. And then we have the margin of the leaf, which is the very edge of the leaf. We have the apex, which is the very top of the leaf. And then we should have veins in this leaf. So we have a primary vein here or midrib, and then we have these lateral veins on there too. So we're not going to get too far into some of this stuff, but lobes and bases and petioles, they will come up over and over. And it's important to have a basic idea of the anatomy because that really helps you when you are doing tree ID on your own. So there's different leaf styles. We can have simple undivided leaves where the blade, where it looks like this, we have the little leaf stem or petiole, and then we have a leaf with one blade here. And this leaf blade can be lobed or cleft. But one of the ways that we can figure out whether it's a simple versus a compound leaf is looking for this bud in the bottom of in the axil. And I also look for a swelling at the base of the petiole that helps me find where that leaf ends. Compound leaves, we can have two different types. We have either pinnately compound leaves where we have a central axis. We call it the petiole here, and then we call it the rachis after that. I'm sorry, I don't know why they did that. And then these are all leaflets. And this is in a, looks like a feather, which is what, because there's one on one side and one on the other. They don't have to line up exactly, but they can be opposite, they can be alternate, they can be sub-opposite. That can be a little bit annoying. It can get you confused too if you're not sure if you have a simple leaf versus a compound leaf when you're looking for branching patterns. So look for that axillary bud or that swelling at the base of the petiole. And then palmately lobed, we have that petiole, and then we have, we can have another substem out to the leaflet, or it can be, the leaflet could be coming right out of the central piece right there. And that's called palmately lobe because it's like the palm of your hand. Leaf attachment, that's what I was saying earlier, it can be a little bit tricky. Alternate leaves, they're born singly at each node as leaves on a stem. So a node is a joint in the stem, a part of the stem that normally bears the leaves. So this is a node here, this is a node here, and if we only have one leaf coming out each of those nodes, that means it's alternate. If we have two leaves coming out at the same node, then that's usually opposite branching. And if we have more than two coming out at that node, then we know that we have whorled branching. And just to reiterate that point, here are some leaves. Can you guys in the chat let me know if these are alternate, opposite, or whorled? This is where I get to find out who's paying attention. Okay, some people are brave and they're getting it right. That's good. How about this one? Excellent. We're doing well. People are, and then this one here. And sorry, I do apologize that this is all a green leaf. I didn't have time to go and find fall colors in this leaf. Good, we got the world. And we'll throw in the names for each of those so that when you get these slides, you can have those too. So, and for anybody who is wanting things identified as we go, this is a black cherry up here in the corner. Then we have dogwood in the center, and on the bottom we have a catalpa. So I like to show things in lots of different styles and ways because everybody has a different learning style. So here is broadleaf, and you can have alternate broadleaf um, branching, and you can have those alternate branchings have simple leaves, which is over 50% of the species, or you can have compound leaves where you have hickory, walnut, and locust. And this one over here, you have birch, oak, elm, beech, magnolia, willow. I think the list goes on. This is probably the biggest grouping out there. And then if you have opposites, you can have simple opposite leaves, which is the maple, dogwood. Catalpa can be whorled or opposite, so I stuck it on there. And opposite compound leaves, pinnately compound, you've got ash, box, elder, and palmately compound, you've got buckeye and horse chestnut. And if you don't like tables, here is an acronym for you. This is MADCAP Ad Horse. M is for maples, A is for ash, but this is really the whole Oleaceae family. So this is ash, lilac, Forsythia, privet. D is for dogwood, except the alternate leaf dogwood. Capris for Caprifoliaceae, which only includes honeysuckle now. Ad had to be added into this for the Adoxaceae family, which is viburnum and elderberry. And then horse is for horse chestnut and buckeye. So these are most of the opposites that are out there. And for a master gardener class, I made a new acronym. I didn't think I should do that to you guys because that was being little sneaky, and I shouldn't do that to everybody. So I think we're going to go on to tree ID now, since my computer got tired of me being on that slide. And the idea this year is I wanted to start from under the canopy. So we're going to start with big pictures, and I'm going to actually ask you to send in through the chat what you think the trees are, but we'll get more information as we go. Okay, so get your fingers ready, because here we go. This picture was taken just a couple weeks ago. Does anybody know what this is? All right, we're getting some answers. And it's definitely red. But just in case people are worried about that, here is the same species with less red. And we don't have yellow maples here. In fact, don't know if I've seen them, but I do find it interesting that our maples sometimes around here go yellow, which is very weird. So this is the same species, and this is excellent because it's showing this opposite branching for the buds or for next year. And I just thought that was fabulous. So everybody's doing really well. This was a red maple. It has leaves that are opposite. They're simple, 2 to 6 inches. They usually have 3 to 5 lobes. And the key for this one is this coarse margin that it has that is pretty serrate, and it has this very V-shaped sinus or margin edge right here. And just because I can't help myself, I also threw in the twig. This twig is going to be what we're going to start seeing as we go into the winter months after all these leaves fall. The twig is usually very red, and it has beautiful scales on the bud that have white mascara like eyelashes on the edges of the scales. And if you have a hand lens, I think they're stunning, but maybe I need a new hobby or another hobby. So I thought that I should do a comparison. So in this picture, we have some red maple leaves, 1, 2, 3. And then we have this other maple leaf, this one here, and this one here, and this one down here. Those are all kind of yellow, but here's another picture of that tree. And is anybody ready to throw out their ideas on this one? Okay, people are starting to feel brave, and you guys are getting it right. This is a sugar maple. And here comes my sugar maple label. The one thing that you should know about this one, if you are out in the winter months, the twigs for this are brown, not red, and the buds are sharply pointed. They're the pointiest of all of the maples, which is kind of funny to say. I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland or one of those where you gotta have pointy shoes. Okay, so we also have silver maples around here, and these mostly go yellow in the fall, and they also have a slightly strong odor when they're crushed. And I mostly see this in lower elevations, not very high. And these leaves are deeply lobed. They can have 3 to 5 sinuses, much deeper than a red maple leaf, and lots of teeth on the edge, serrated like the red maple leaf. And because we are in the maple realm, I thought it was important to throw in a fall box elder picture. Box elder is our only maple that has a compound leaf, and it's pinnately compound because sometimes it actually will have 5 leaflets instead of 3. But it has a really cool green twig through winter with white hairs on the twig for the buds. I think it's really cool. And then I really felt like I needed to put in this one here that has a yellow color. This is the Norway maple. It's not a native, but it is here. And it will turn completely yellow. And if you pull off a leaf, you should get a milky sap, and that helps identify it. The points on this one are much more stunted than they are on the sugar maple, but we do have those clear U's on there and no serration on those leaf margins. So that can be a little tricky when you get that with a sugar maple nearby. And someone just asked sugar, silver, red, box elder, and one I didn't put in here tonight, the striped maple, are all native to this area. Sugar you have to get in high elevations though. And yeah. So here is our next type in your answer, leaf. And if you need a hint, this is a compound leaf. All right, some people are getting it. Okay, this is a hickory, and I'm not going to make you guess which species of hickory, because that would be really mean. And I don't think that's what the goal or the game plan is for today. So this is pignut hickory. And pignut hickories usually have 5 leaflets, sometimes 7. Of course, the one I'm showing you has has the 7 on it. Of course, that's how it always goes for me. And the important thing for me for identifying a pignut hickory is looking at the bud, which is here, and the twig with this year's new growth. And that twig of this year's new growth should have 0 hairs on it. Glabra here means smooth, and the edge of that twig should have 0 hairs on it. And then we usually have a bud that looks egg-shaped, or I think sometimes it looks like a little bit of a pear, and that's how I identify that tree. Next is red hickory. This is also known as sweet pignut hickory. This one can be very tricky for anybody who is out there trying to take care of these or find these trees. I went out with a forester about, let's say about a month and a half ago, and we walked about, we probably didn't go very far, but we were out there for about an hour and a half looking to tell the difference between red hickories, mockernuts, and we also had shagbark. And it was hilarious because we really had to work hard. So the things I want to tell you so that you can do it or figure it out is the red hickory has a very round fruit. It has a thin husk and it splits freely to the base in 4 parts, the husk. And the petioles on the leaves are often reddish, and there could be some pubescence on there. Other than that, it can be pretty tricky. So, a lot of the books actually just lump these in with pignut hickories. So don't feel bad if you're scratching your head over a hickory outside. And then we have some other hickories that I thought I should show you. Shagbark hickory, you can see the shags on this, so you know what that one is. You don't even have to see the leaves. And this is mockernut hickory, which is Carya alba. And that is because the bud, which I don't have in this picture, that's great, Emily. When the scales fall off of it, the bud inside is white and it looks like a white semi morsel that you would use in cooking. So aren't those the butterscotch ones or the white chocolate chips that you get in the bag, the Toll House bag? The other thing that I look for on these is I want to see a lot of hairs on the new growth from this year, as well as the bottom of the petiole on these compound leaves. That's really important for me to see in order to help identify it. Shagbark hickories can be a little downy and fuzzy as well, but they're not as much as mockernut. And you also get a pretty good ability in the mountains. You mostly have shagbark. You don't have as many mockernuts up high. They sort of fall out of the canopy at about 3,000 feet. And then I was standing at like 3,000 feet and I found one. So they always read the books and it really helps me out. While we're in the Carya area with the hickories, I thought I should throw in the black walnut, which is this one right here. Also has a big round fruit. It is larger than the hickory nuts, very round. And if you pick one up when it's black, your fingers will also turn black too. These have very stout twigs and they have compound leaves that are pentately compound, and there can be 10 to 24 leaflets for them. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I think the black walnut is our laziest tree out there. They tend to be the one that puts out their leaves last in spring, and they're the first ones that lose them in the fall. So they must really maximize their photosynthesis because they're just not hanging around for it, which I find kind of funny. I thought I'd do a walnut comparison because we have black walnut, and this is what we're going to start seeing for the winter. We have this heart-shaped leaf scar underneath the bud, which is right here. And then over here is the butternut or the white walnut. And the bud's up here, and we have the same almost 3-lobed heart-shaped bud here. But the big difference that's really easy to see is this one has a unibrow of fuzz right in here. And you can see the fuzz unibrow on the side of this one too. That's very indicative to find them. Often people will try to do it by leaves. That can be kind of tricky because the butternut or the white walnut is supposed to have a terminal leaflet, but I often find black walnuts that have terminal leaflets, even though they're not supposed to have terminal leaflets. So there's some gradation in there, so you got to be a little bit careful. But I find this this leaf scar and bud hairiness in between to be the way to go to figure it out. So butternut has a unibrow, and there's nothing going on between the leaf scar and the bud on a black walnut. All right, here's another leaf picture for you guys to start writing in your answers. Ooh, okay. I'm gonna go and give another picture. Can you see any leaf shapes up there? And of course, I just couldn't help myself because I really like this tree. Apparently, I take lots and lots of pictures of it. Yes, someone saw a mitten up there, and I definitely saw some tridents as well. So this is sassafras, and this is the tree that has three distinct leaf forms: the entire leaf, the mitten-shaped leaf, and the three-lobed trident leaf. This is very fragrant when crushed. The twigs will remain green all through winter, and because this is an alternate branching tree, you can't get it messed up with the box elder because that's opposite branching. But this will have green twigs all through winter, and if you scratch those, they give a nice spicy aroma. And the fruit is really pretty. I don't have a picture of that to share. I don't know why I thought I took pictures of it, but I took pictures of it when it was still green. But they are dark blue, egg-shaped, berry-like drupes that are held in these red stalked cups, and they're fabulous. And that's on my list of next year to make sure I get pictures of. Here's our next tree. And you guys are doing really well, by the way. This one shouldn't be too tricky to get. All right, we have some ringers in here. So this is a tulip tree where we have these simple leaves that are alternate, and they can be wider than they are long, and they have that flattened square top to them. And the twigs can be reddish brown, and they're often shiny, and the buds even look like duckbills or mittens, and sometimes they're fuzzy. And then I couldn't resist it. We have fruit this time of year that we can see in the forest. And I think they look like wooden sconces against the sky. And that'll be a way to identify this tree throughout winter. And there was lots of different names coming in for this tree. None of you were wrong. I prefer tulip tree because there are botanists who get a little cranky about the use of poplar with this because we have a whole genera of trees that are in the populus category, from quaking aspens to big tooth aspen to our cottonwood trees. And the reason why those, the quaking aspen, it shivers in the wind, it's because it has a flattened petiole, or that leaf stem is flattened. Whereas on our tulip tree, it's a round petiole because they are not related at all. And that's why they want to try and separate those out. This one might be tricky, but I took this picture yesterday because I was completely gobsmacked and I couldn't walk away from it. So does anybody know what this is? This is getting harder, and I realize that. So I'll give you a couple seconds, and if we don't have anybody who gives any ideas, we'll skip over to what it is. This is great. It gives me time to drink my tea. So we're gonna have to look for branching pattern in this. And I think some people are getting it pretty closely. This is a dogwood. So leaves are opposite, and I tried to find some leaves on here that were opposite, but I don't know if it was very clear. So I do apologize. This slide was not as good as it could have been. These leaves are absolutely stunning this time of year. They're opposite branching pattern, opposite leaves. They're simple, 2 to 6 inches long. They usually are entire on their margin. They can be a little crenate, have a little bit of a wave to them. The twigs are gonna have an onion or button-shaped terminal flower bud, and then they're gonna have um, the leaf buds are usually purple and sort of oppressed to the stem of the twig. And then we've got these red berry-like drupes that are absolutely stunning in relation to those purple pink leaves. Just such a gorgeous tree this time of year. And here's another red leaf tree. And I was out with somebody yesterday doing a makeup walk, and this one was really not an easy tree for this person. And I would say in general, this is not an easy tree for anybody. The bark can be very variable, but the one key thing about this tree is that it is usually the first one to have red leaves as early as July 30th. I'm going to go forward and show you this one. And hopefully these under the canopy leaves are not driving you guys crazy. This is black gum, Nyssa sylvatica, and these are alternate leaves. They're simple, and they usually have a drip tip on the edge of them. I find little acuminate tips there. And I have seen some with shallow lobes. It was really weird. It was up in Madison County. I actually need to go back and see what the fall color on that one looks like. They do have a dark purplish blue drupe, and that coloring that we see all the way at the end of July, that it's actually considered to be foliar flagging, and it's actually telling migrating species, hey, I have something here that's energy for you as you make your way on the wing. So I think that's kind of cool that a tree like this is able to communicate with birds that are flying by. And for those that guess sourwood, you were really close because they are very, very similar, and they are hard to tell apart. The key piece this time of year is finding the fruit or the remains of the flower stems on these, because they're usually white against the actual red foliage. The piece that you have to look for very closely is the bottom part of the leaf, so the apex. So this is not the base of the leaf that's next to the petiole. This is the other end, the farthest piece out. Usually there's little tiny teeth right at that, from the halfway down to the bottom of the leaf. But you have to get really close to see that. And sometimes they're really tall, so it's not easy to tell. But they're absolutely stunning this time of year. If anybody lives over near Walnut Grove Park, you should definitely go there. I think our tree steward class is going over there to do a fall planting soon. And hopefully some of them will be able to wander away from the boat ramp area and find some of the sourwoods around the reservoir, because they're going to be stunning and vibrant in color. Here's our next one. And there are some trees that I just don't stop taking pictures of, which is pretty funny. Probably need to stop taking pictures of this one. I have too many. But it has this beautiful leaf and it has this lovely yellow color. That leaf is usually heart-shaped. So Basswood is a really good guess, but they don't get this yellowy green. They usually get more brown yellow. Yep, everybody's getting it right now. This is an eastern redbud, getting those beautiful yellow leaves. And if my picture had been good, we would have seen some of the brown fruits that were on there that are in pods or they look like beans. Someone picked up a bean pod the other day while I was out walking over at Patricia Ann, and they asked me, which legume is this? And I looked down and I said, the seeds aren't attached, so it is going to be a red bud. If the seeds are attached, it's usually a black locust. And that's such a silly, tiny detail. But it was kind of cool to be able to like have that in my back pocket and get it right. So, but they're beautiful. The thing that's interesting about the Eastern red bud, even though it is in a legume family, this is not a nitrogen fixing species. And these leaves are simple. And if you are looking in any of the texts, they call it unifoliate, which means one compound leaflet, which I'm not sure why they bothered with, but because everything else in the legume family or the pea family is a compound leaf, I felt like it feels like they'd had to make up a name just to help it out. How about this one? This one might be hard. So I'll give you another one. But every year I have to take pictures of this over and over again. And the piece that's going to really help you are these little tiny spurs that are in that the leaves come out of. And maybe I gave it away. It's another one that starts with B. So this is going to be the black or sweet birch. And I like the slide before for leaves, but I like this one for the fruit because you can see these funny little standing up cones in here. And those are they actually look like little cones, and they have hundreds of winged seeds in there that will shake out in the wind throughout the winter months when we don't have when we don't have leaves and we have lots of wind going through. So these are alternate leaves. They're simple. They're pinnately veined. They usually are shiny above and paler below. I love the sun dappling through these. This is another one that I take way too many pictures of. And then we also have river birch around here that has that peely, artistic looking bark to it. And then we also have yellow birch, and this is going to be up in the mountains that has this yellowish tinted bark that it has. The yellow birch and the black or sweet birch are the ones that you can scratch and you can smell the wintergreen on them. And that's what we use to make birch beer. And when we're making root beer, they use these birch trees as well as, and they mix it with vanilla. The river birch is not going to be giving any of that wintergreen oil or smell, so don't scratch it too much because it's never going to give it to you. And I never found it in a white birch either, but we don't have enough white birches here to put that in the presentation. So here's another one, and you don't have to know which one. You just have to get the common name for this grouping. Yes. And I'm pretty sure that this one is smooth sumac. But all my sumac pictures, they really are all in a jumble. And so the only one I really know is the shining or winged, because you can see the wings in between the compound leaflets, which is really cool. And they're always such a stunning, vibrant maroon color. And then the staghorn sumac always has the fuzzy twigs and the huge prominent fruit on there, which is why I think the first one was the smooth, because it didn't have any of those any fuzziness on the twigs or branches. Nice job. You guys are doing great at this. Here's my next picture. And we've already done birch. So what's left that looks like birch? Yes. You got it. We're now at the American beech. So these leaves are alternate. They're simple. They're elliptical to oblong ovate. They're also pinnately veined. And the difference between this one and the birch is the birch is going to have a doubly serrate margin on the edge of its leaf, whereas this one is it has distinct teeth, one at the end of every pinnate vein. And I don't know if I can say that several times. And through winter, we're going to have these very long spear-like pointed buds, and we have a three-part nut, 3 or 4 part nut that's got a three-part. It's got a triangular nut inside that's edible. It has little tiny spines on it. And I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, so here's our next one. Yeah. Um, so, our oaks, they do such a poor job of giving us a lot of good fall color. But this chestnut oak the other day was doing a pretty good job, and I was pretty excited. So this is chestnut oak. It really, you can see that chlorophyll being pulled back, and you can start seeing that yellow coming in from the xanthophyll and the keratins that are underneath. But man, it take a while. And if it takes too long, we go straight to brown because of all the tannins that are in here. So these are alternate leaves. They're simple. They have that crenate margin that has no points on it. They're they're blunted as they go around. And I wanted to throw in our twig here with the buds. When you are doing any winter ID, if you see a cluster of buds at the end of a branch, always think oak, no matter what. And then our acorns for this have, they're dark brown, they're lustrous, they're ovoid, and they have a cap that they usually fall out of their cap as soon as they fall. The cap is really thin on the edges, I find. And these buds I find to be orange and brown. They're a little bit, the scales are a little bit hard to see, but they are there. But that orange brown color is a giveaway for me. White oak and we'll do a couple oaks here now that we've gotten under the canopy of an oak. White oaks are going to always have these rounded edges as well. And Quercus in this case has turned a beautiful red on the edges. They also go orange, and they can have I've seen them in yellow as well. And I think the buds for these, when they're in bud, look rounded like little buttons. But you'll have to take my word for it, or go find an oak nearby, a white oak nearby, and take a look. Here is a northern red oak. So we've switched over from rounded edges to pointed edges with bristle tips. These are often oblong with 7 to 11 bristle tip lobes. I don't know if I've ever counted the lobes on them, but the bristle tip is what we want to see every time we want to think of the red oak group. And these twigs are reddish, they're glabrous, and they have clusters of buds at the tips as well. And I think these are kind of reddish when they are those buds. And this is the one that has the cap of the acorn looks like a French beret. And that's the one, if you've been out in the woods with me, I often tend to whistle, which people probably don't like. But it's a great thing to give kids to do so they can take it home and whistle all day long with their parents. The other one is a scarlet oak. Scarlets have usually a very deep sinus at the base, on the closest to the base of the leaf. The sinuses are very open and rounded. They almost come back on themselves, making a very nice C, or even to the point where they'd actually close and they'd be O. So I think of Scarlet O'Hara when I think of a scarlet oak leaf. They can very much be confused with a pin oak leaf, which should have a very open U sinus at the bottom, but they can be confused. So be careful about that. I often use the shape of a pin oak to help me identify a pin oak. A pin oak shape is branches down at the bottom, branches out in the middle, and branches up at the top. And this one isn't usually that uniform. And scarlet oaks always have these buds that look like they've been dipped in confection sugar. They're always got these little white hairs right on the tops of the buds, and they can be absolutely magnificent. And the color is just stunning this time of year. How about this one? You've already done chestnut oak. Yeah, so this is a chestnut. I can't get underneath them, they're not big enough. So this is the American chestnut. They have these alternate leaves that are simple, and they have these sharp points on the ends of the leaves. They usually look like the crests of waves, and they all point towards the end of the leaf. So when you point towards the end of the leaf, you're serrated. And if you don't point in any direction, then you're just dentate, which yeah, those weird things I know. Um, and then we have the fruit over here with these four parts covered in spines, very unfriendly. Need a good pair of thick gloves if you're going to do anything with those. But it's always fun to go over to the Department of Forestry and help them do some shucking of chestnuts. And then we take the seeds that come out, and we do the sink test. If they float, they get trashed, and if they sink, they are sent off to Cremora, where the Department of Forestry's nursery is, and they are planted. So it's always fun to be part of that. So what do you think when you see a slide like this? And when you see this many acorns, what comes to mind? Maybe that was too ambiguous. I want to know, is it a mast deer or not? And I was deer food. That's a great answer. So I didn't know much about mast deers, and I was really worried that we weren't going to have a lot of fall color this year. So off I went traipsing around to try and find more information about what is considered a mast deer and what is not. And I was very surprised by the answer. So the last couple of species that we did were the beech, the oaks, and the chestnut. And those are the only three trees that they use when they are determining whether it's a mast deer or not. Does anybody know why? Okay, I can't wait. I'm going to tell you anyway. So, hickory nuts are too hard for everybody to eat them. So, the only thing that eats hickory nuts are going to be rodents, and that means that that can't be deer food. But our beech nuts, our acorns, and our chestnuts, and we don't obviously have many chestnuts now, so it's really just the beech and the oaks. The acorns that are produced feed almost all of the animals in the forest. And when we have a lot of acorns, deer get to eat them, bear eat them. I don't know about a coyote or a fox. We have squirrels and chipmunks, birds, lots of things eat our acorns and our beech nuts. And so what they do to determine a mast year is in late August, they go out with binoculars and they look into the trees to see how many acorns they can see on a tree. And they're supposed to be looking at either white oaks, red oaks, or beeches. Obviously, I just said we don't have enough chestnuts to do that with them. And if they see acorns within 30 seconds, then they put a 1 down for that tree. So they don't actually count any acorns, which was a complete shocker to me. So they go around, they check all these trees, and they try to do a number of trees, whether it's either a yes, no, it's a 1 if there are acorns, or beech nuts, it's a 0 if there are not. And then at the end, they tally up out of how many trees, how many were 1s, how many were 0s. And the percentage of those is what determines whether or not we are having a mast year. And I was like, well, you didn't count a single acorn. This isn't what I thought it was. I'm really annoyed. Like, how on earth is this helpful? And the forester I talked to was like, if I have a mast year, I know that I'm going to see more fawn in the spring. There's a direct correlation, which was kind of shocking to me. So there you go. Some new information that I got to learn just so that I had something extra to talk to you guys about in case there was no fall color this year. So we're going to wind this up now. This is another, can you guess what it is? And for this one, I would look at things like this because they're going to help you. Yes. So this is witch hazel. And I am absolutely obsessed with witch hazels. I love those flowers. They're absolutely gorgeous. They look like party streamers hanging out of the floral cup there. And they actually are the last flowering, or the last plant to flower in the fall. And in some species, especially from if they're from the horticultural trade, they're actually the first thing that flowers in January, February time. Really neat. And the part that's interesting is out of 40,000 flowers, only about 1% actually germinate. And part of that is they don't know who is actually pollinating this guy. They think it might be bees. They also think it might be gnats, but they're still not sure. And then the other problem is that because the witch hazel catapults its seed away from it about 30 feet, everybody located nearby is somehow related to you. So that's probably another reason why we don't have a lot of successful pollination, germination, and seed development. But they're super cool. They are in flower right now, so everybody should leave their house and go look outside with a flashlight for witch hazel. No, I'm kidding. So stay inside today, but tomorrow or the next time that you guys have some free time, go outside and look for witch hazel in flower because they're absolutely stunning. And I think I had a hard time finding them in flower over at Patricia Ann Broman. Borman. I got the last part of that wrong. Anyway, but they are in flower. They're really pretty, and they're usually found in wet seeps or near streams, and they're usually sort of hovering just above you. They can be multi-stemmed, but they're big enough that you can usually get underneath them. And then if you're out and about and you're a little bit getting a little hungry and we've had some frost, that's very important. You should go out and try a persimmon. They're gorgeous and they're so pretty, but do not eat them if it has not had a frost because they will be disgusting and you will be very disappointed with how it tastes. And with that, I forgot to put in references tonight, so I'm sorry. I'll have to pull that slide and put that in. But here's our last slide. If you decide that you need to do some more foraging outside, I saw lots of grape with fall color this year, and that was a lot of fun to see. So thanks everybody for attending, and I will close this up so that if you have any questions, I can work on answering those. All right. So I know that I saw a couple questions in here. What's a good app for tree ID? I use Virginia V-Tree sometimes, but I often just stick with the Flora. I really like the Common Trees of Virginia book that the Department of Forestry puts out. It's very easy. We do not share the link for the video for the presentation. That's usually something just for the presenter to use in case they want to figure out how they're doing and that sort of thing. But we will post the slides for this tomorrow on our website. And I answered the sugar, silver, and red maples are all native. So I got that one done. And it looks like someone else was able to screen share. And we should ask them to stop that. Okay, I think I got that done by pushing mine on top of theirs. Okay, I'm looking for more questions. Do you know what animals eat pawpaw? I think anybody who can get their paws on them eat pawpaw. And I had a really cool experience. I saw lots of pawpaw on a plant this year, and it was crazy looking. And let me see if I can really quickly find that for you. Look at those. Aren't they wild? So pawpaw is in 3 parts, so you can get up to 6 pawpaws per flower piece. So I thought that was really cool, and since someone asked, I thought I'd share it. And I don't know who eats them. But the good news is that deer do not browse on them, so that's nice, because the leaves don't ever get munched by them. And I'm gonna stop recording.